Okay, okie dokie. Part 2 of the using your sources lecture. And hopefully I'll remember to label these correctly. We need to talk about how you insert sources into, or excuse me, how you then do a works cited page. So you've inserted your sources in your paper, and you've done your in-text citations correctly, your parenthetical citations if necessary. Again, no page number, then don't put anything down. So for those of you using websites and the like, then you probably won't have a page number. But if you're getting something out of a book or a newspaper or a magazine or anything like that, obviously you will have a page number. So you've done that. And the reason you do that is those sort of act as little red flags for the reader. Again, to show that the information you're presenting is not your own. And you have to be really careful, and you sort of have to be ridiculously anally retentive about that, and sort of Nazi-like on yourself to show every single minute when you found anything that came from someone else, paraphrasing, summarizing, whatever it is. Take no chances in order to avoid plagiarizing, in order to keep from getting a 0 on your paper and flunking my class and probably getting in trouble with the school. So every time a bit of that outside information comes up, send that little red flag up in the text. What that does then is I'm reading and going through your paper, and I find that spot where you've put that in-text citation. I say, okay, this is something this is something they didn't come up with. And let's say I'm interested in maybe where you found that information. I want to double check it. I don't necessarily believe you. Maybe I'm just a scholar and the source you're citing sounds really interesting. So in that case, I then go to the end of your paper, to the works cited, and if you've given me the last name of the author and the page number in the text, in your works cited page, there will be an entry for every source that you use in your paper. And so, say you cite some guy's book, some book by some guy named John Smith. I go to the end of your paper, go to your works cited page, and there is an entry for John Smith's book. And what you give in the works cited in each entry is all the information necessary for somebody to go out and find that source and either verify what you've said or do research of their own, or just engage with it for their own happy purposes. So that's what you're doing. The information in the text refers the reader to the works cited, and then they can go from there and go out into the world and find that text for themselves. Works cited pages are formatted very particularly. First of all, let's see, where do we need to go? Again, we're in the MLA section. If you look at towards the end of that section on page 219, there is a sample works cited page, and I'll show it to you here. This is what it looks like overall. Again, page 219. Notice that the margins are still 1 inch. Let me focus that a little. There we go. Your last name, page number will be in the upper right hand corner, and in one of the lectures that I upload today or tomorrow, I'll show you how to do that. The font is still the same. It's going to be Times New Roman, size 12. The top of the page, what you'll do is at the end of your paper, hit enter on down to the next page, center, type works cited, just like that, hit enter, and then go back to the left side of the page. My cat's trying to interfere and help teach the class. Notice it's title centered, not underlined. You don't bold, you don't italicize, you don't make pretty colors, you don't make it bigger than everything else, anything like that. Just center it and capitalize the W and the C in works cited. And then you see that there's an entry for each of these sources. For example, this first one is taken from the New York Times. Has the author's name, last name first, then the first name, then the title of the article in quotation marks. Shorter works are put in quotes, so titles of newspaper articles, magazine articles, poem titles, TV single episode titles, things like that, while longer works, like a book, a movie, a TV show as a whole, a play, or in this instance, the newspaper or magazine itself, they are italicized. All right? So then the name of the newspaper is given there, then the organization that runs it. The New York Times is the name of the organization that, of course, runs the New York Times, or the sponsoring organization. Then a comma, the date that it was written. This shows, or in this case, this has been taken off the New York Times Online. So last year when the MLA updated their guidelines, they said that everybody has to say whether something is a print or a web source. So you see print, web there, web the next one, web. These are all web sources apparently. Web. But if that was the actual magazine, the actual newspaper, then instead of web there, it would say print. And then that last date is the date that it was accessed. For online information, you'll always probably put the date of access. Notice that that the Works Cited page is organized alphabetically. Notice as well that after the first line, what is done is what's called a hanging indent. Hanging indents are done. Actually, the easiest way to do that is to show you, but I don't have the version of Word that most of you guys probably have. I can talk you through it and then offer some advice. So here's what I'll say. Hanging indents are done. What you need to do is, once you get on that Works Cited page, if you're in Microsoft Office, or if you're in Microsoft Word 2007, the most recent one, at the very top of the page, once you're writing your document, you'll see the sort of toolbars across the top, and it's got the place where you change the font, and the place where you adjust the size of the font, and the spacing buttons and everything like that. What you need to do, there's a couple things you need to do. First, you need to do the hanging indent, and what you'll do is those toolbars are each broken up according to what they work with, or what part of the paper they deal with. There's one towards the middle that says paragraph, one little box, and at the bottom right-hand corner of that box, there's a little arrow inside a box. If you click on that, it opens up a dialog box, a little window dealing with paragraph issues, and there towards the middle is the one for adjusting the tabs, for adjusting the indentation. In that tab area, that indentation area, you'll see a little drop-down menu that says Special above it. You click on that, select Hanging Indent, and it'll automatically give that hanging indent. In other words, where each line after the first is indented ½ inch. So you type, once you do that, you just go through and type your whole entry out, and then when you hit Enter, it'll take you all the way back to the left, like this. And then you just type your whole entry out, and as you get to the end of the line, it will automatically hanging indent. Okay? The other thing, and I probably should have said this earlier, but the other thing you need to do while you're formatting stuff is, some of you, the spacing on your biographical information at the top is really, big. That's not really the term I want, but there's way too much space. And what's happening is, another aspect of Microsoft Word 2007 that's sort of frustrating is that they automatically add extra spaces after paragraphs. So if you go up to the spacing button at the top of your toolbar and click on it, it will open up that drop-down menu, and that's where you can select, single spacing, double spacing, triple spacing, etc., etc. Before you start typing your paper, when you're doing all your formatting issues, go down to the bottom and say remove that space after paragraphs, and it will more properly space your paper. Anyways, back to the Works Cited. So for each type of source that you can ever come across, a book, magazine, newspaper, encyclopedia, dictionary, play, book of poetry, guy talking on the street, interview, lecture, TV show, radio broadcast, any kind of source that you could ever imagine, there's a different way to do the Works Cited entry for each of those. All right, and that's just because there's different information needed to go and find those sources. So, what you have to think about is what kind of sources do you have? Again, the most common that I expect to see from you guys are magazines, newspapers, online sources, and books. Now, remember, of course, that they need to be reputable sources. We talked about that already. They need to be ones from places that you can trust. And in general, a reputable source is going to be a scholarly book, a major news source or periodical, and websites that are done by reputable organizations. So anybody can go out and make a .com or something like that. And, Wikipedia is not reputable. But if it says .edu, then it's associated with an institution of learning, like a college or something like that. If it says .org, often it's probably trustworthy, although Wikipedia is a .org. But a lot of .orgs are nonprofits that are pretty reputable. So then you just have to kind of use your best judgment. Again, remember, you're trying to put the impact and the power of someone else's expert authority and wisdom and whatnot behind you and experience. And if you're just going and finding some schlub off the internet who knows about as much as you, except they've got a website to act as their soapbox, then why am I going to trust you? And by extension, them. Or the other way around. So anyways, each type of source has a different method, a different thing that you need to give for it. What I'll say is this. If you look at the beginning of Section 3, which is this this section of MLA documentation in your keys book, you'll notice that the first bit talks about, like I said, how to cite sources in the paper, and it shows you how to go through all these different types in the paper. On the other side of the page, it talks about doing the MLA list of works cited. Notice my very fancy highlighting there. And you'll see here that it's got a different entry for every kind of source you can think of. So let me zoom in here and focus a little. One author, these are all print books, parts of books, etc. So a translation, a book with an editor, a single author, etc., etc. And this one's about print works and periodicals, magazines and newspapers, works accessed in online databases, and sources found on the web. What you need to do then is not memorize how to do everything, but let's say that you have a magazine, you come to this page, and you see magazines are talked about on page 187. So, flip to page 187, and everybody gets to hear the baby crying right now. Page 187, you look and it says there at the bottom, article in a magazine. It tells you things to think about, information to keep in mind. And then on the next page, it's got a sample of what it should look like. Alright? Most sources, while it varies, you're always going to have to, at the beginning, give the author's name, last name, then the first name, the title in quotes, usually the name of whatever it's taken out of, date that it was published, pages that you're looking at, and of course what source. Now it varies. I mean, if we look over here at the newspaper, again, it talks about whether it's a late edition. If you look at a article in an online magazine, notice, yes, we still start out with the author's name and then the title and then the name of the name of the newspaper. But then, like I said earlier, you give the sponsoring information, date it was published, things like that. So it gives you general information throughout here of each different type. And you can always look at that and check it. But the bottom line is always